the beans like we used to do. Pass the beans. Pass the beans like we used to do. Pass the beans.
Pass the beans.
Pass the beans.
Pass the beans.
Pass the beans. The Beans Talk. Hey, Bean fam, it is the Beans Talk podcast, and we are coming back at you with another episode. Yeah, man, we're four educators of color, bringing you raw, authentic conversation about society views and community engagement. Everybody, I'm Fabs.
I'm Steph. What's up, guys?
Hey, fam, it's Ro.
And this is TJ.
Yeah, man, I'm really excited to jump into this episode, but of course, we're going to start off with our do now.
Yes, I have the do now today. I feel like it's been a minute.
Yeah,
It's been a little
since
minute.
you kicked it off.
I know, and this is like the perfect time because March has just begun,
Yes.
and we're at the beginning of the month and the beginning of a new season. I was just talking about how much I look forward to spring because it has always signified to me the year, the season of like growth and starting fresh and starting anew. So this do now question is going to kind of get us inside of that space. So as we're starting off this month and moving into the spring season, I want to know, what goal are you going to recommit to? What is something you're going to recommit to, or something you're going to start that you've been afraid of starting, or you have just like let the ball drop?
Damn, I don't even remember what goals I had set for myself. That's how bad it is.
I know, this is the time.
For me, it's going to be health goals. I mean, I know starting at the year 2020, I really wanted to get on like the fitness, going to the gym, and it kind of fell off. It's hard, man. Like
Yeah.
having a full-time job and coming home and thinking about the gym. It's like, I'd be tired. I'd be tired. So I'm going to like recommit to that, just like not just at the gym, but also being conscious of like the food I'm consuming and all that stuff. Because, spring means summer and summer means beaches and being nude and shirtless.
Nude?
You
Nude,
guys do go to nude beaches.
What,
so,
you ain't going?
Nah.
I think you'll come on to this side.
Spring is also annoying. Like, don't you get annoyed by spring? Like sometimes I get annoyed at the birds just a chirping. Like the birds are just a chirping.
Just a chirping.
I just get annoyed.
I love it.
I'm like,
It makes me want to.
What, it's too happy for you? Too much new, too much birth, too much growth?
Yeah, sometimes it's just like, shut up, birds.
It reminds you of a fairy tale and you just can't take it, huh?
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes it's just like, I like winter, the bleakness of winter.
I bet you like the bleakness of winter.
Spring just reminds me that people are going to be outside and like
enjoying their lives, enjoying the sun.
God.
And you don't like that? Oh my goodness.
This nigga finds that miserable.
I know.
But yeah,
Wow.
health goals.
I cannot.
So recommit into some health.
Yeah.
Because I am not about to be on the beach with you, stomach first.
Stomach first.
I'm joking. I would go to the beach with you regardless because I'm
Jiggling
gonna
with
be the
every
same
step,
way.
just jiggling with every step.
I don't want
Dancing.
I don't want all that.
What? The beach.
Jiggling with
Dancing with every step, just moving,
We getting
everything
tight.
moving.
We getting tight. Bodies are getting tight.
Oh yeah, for sure. March is supposed to. I mean, I don't know. I'm waiting on Dre to like hit me up. This is March.
And Dre is our trainer.
Oh,
This month.
This month, Dre's supposed to be, training me. I hope whenever he gets a chance to lock in some time, he just had a baby and stuff. So whenever he gets a chance to lock in some time, definitely health goals will be getting met. But primary goals for me,
To recommit to.
I can't even remember my initial ones, to be honest.
Or something you want to start that you have been holding off.
Yeah.
You haven't been like
100%
dedicated to it.
Yeah. I think that's something I would want to do, is be 100% dedicated to the work that I'm actually doing. I feel like a lot of times I become sluggish. I'm procrastinating. I would like to work at that. Just doing it, like writing down the goal and actually getting it done. I think that's something that I really want to do is sticking to my guns when it comes to whatever it is that I want to get done. To be honest, I feel like procrastination is another ball game.
Procrastination swallows you up whole.
Oh my God. I need to stop thinking about procrastination and then just start thinking about my goals and making sure I'm getting those done. So,
Well, is there
I
something
wanna do.
that you're gonna like work on this month that you are excited about?
This month, the month of March, I'll get back to you on that one. I'll get back to you.
Goal that I want to recommit to. I'm excited, man. Conversations with Bora Patrick. We're really gonna get the DJing thing happen, man. And so I'm excited to see where that can go. Something else I want to recommit to, man. Just stop being in my head. Like I don't know if that even makes any sense, but I'm the reason why I don't do a lot of shit. And so
Facts.
just getting out of my head and just getting to it, man. So Bora Patrick, I'm ready.
Yeah.
Ready? Are you ready?
I actually have a second goal, a second thing I want to.
Ain't nobody ask you. Dang.
Well, I'm going to tell you because it's me, it's TJ. So I'm gonna tell you.
Okay. Go ahead.
The second thing I want to recommit to is like really meeting my writing goals.
Yeah.
Nice.
I don't know, like you guys know that the whole the book that I had originally I had to put aside and I had to create something new. So my goal is to really have it done by the end of the summer. So that means like writing every single day, and then like even when I'm tired, really taking time to make progress because it's not easy. And that's something that I really want to recommit to and just make sure that that is done and that it doesn't fall to the wayside or I don't push it back because it's a big goal.
Yeah.
I've had it for a long time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So revisiting. So what I want to do is be able to like schedule out my plan for not just the Beans Talk, but I've also been working on like consulting type of thing, and so I would like to be able to lock in a schedule and actually committing to that schedule, like, having my plans written out. Steph is so good about that. Steph is like solid. So I'll have her in my corner maybe to help me with that. But just writing and drafting out a plan for like my future goals with the business and stuff like that. I think that's what I would like to do.
Cool.
Commit to that.
Yeah.
How about you, Steph?
My thing is that I want to. What's up, TJ? Do I have my moment? I wish you guys please go on YouTube and see the look that he just gave me when it was time for me to share my stuff.
But once undivided attention when it's his turn.
Yeah.
Right. Because
Okay.
I'm TJ.
Well, excuse me, I'll keep it short.
That wasn't what the look was saying. I was just preparing for what you were going to say.
Here we go.
Yeah. Something that I want to commit to and recommit to is just doing things that scare me. And I would say it's kind of similar to you, Ro, just making sure that I'm getting out of my own head and actually taking the risk and taking the leap to do things that I've always wanted to do. And I feel like I've been getting off to a pretty decent start.
I believe it.
I've started my YouTube journey, so I'm like vlogging consistently.
Steffi's World.
It's Steffi's World.
Shit's lit. The locks, I'm looking at your head, baby.
That
I'm here
was the
for it.
next thing I was going to say. I finally have taken the leap. I have been wanting to put locks in my hair for the past couple months, and I have been, please do not put your dreadlocks next to
I like you.
Cranium.
I can't wait till they get that long, Steph,
It's
so you
gonna
can
look
do
good
that style.
one day.
That's cute.
It's gonna look good.
I'm here for it. I'm here for it all. And then the pull away happens and they were fabulous.
So my locks right now, y'all, I am really struggling. I
Get
have
out of your
always
head.
heard that
Get out of your head.
You're right. I do.
out of
I
your
need to
head.
get out of my head, but I at least installed them.
Yes.
So I finally installed them. I've been wanting to do that for a couple
Installed
months.
them?
Yes.
Like it's a.
That's how it works, baby.
That's
You
how-
know,
that's
you're
what-
You
bald
say
headed.
installed?
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
bald
you
headed.
say-
I know, but I think of like an AC, if like you install a refrigerator or something. Not,
You install locks.
Yes. So I installed my locks.
I installed them.
There it is.
Yeah.
a weird motif,
Bay
but-
did install them. She did a great job. So if you're thinking about it, holla, because we need money.
Golden hands, baby.
Ooh, so
Financial freedom.
you're doing here now.
Hey, I have been actually.
Yeah. So I'm just doing things or just getting the ball rolling on things that I've been in my head about and have been wanting to do. And so I want to continue to ride that train and just like just do things for me and not be worried about what everybody else would think about it or anything like that. I think I've given up to this point of my 29 years. I think I've been giving too many people control over myself just by worrying about what other people think. F that. This is Steph, and I'm doing whatever I want to do.
Because it's
I'm free.
Steffi's world.
Yeah, it's Steffi's
I'm
world.
free,
We just
niggas.
live in
That
it.
should be the song. It's Steffi's world.
But not you singing it.
What? Definitely me singing it.
Okay. Sorry.
Definitely me
Okay.
singing it.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Wait for it.
It's Steffi's world.
She won't be singing any of my stuff, y'all, but it's a good gesture.
I guess I got played. Damn. Damn.
You have other talents.
Anyway,
Like what?
we don't have to dive into anything.
Right,
just
because
now.
now it's time for us to move on to the debates.
The debate. That is with me, Oi. Today.
Oh, oi.
Today, Oi.
Oh, okay.
Josia.
Whoosh. Men lang mo yan.
Trilingual,
Excuse me?
man.
Aujourd'hui.
Ooh.
Don't you have to be like
That's today.
fluent
Yeah,
in
that's-
all three languages to be trilingual?
Okay, I'm not gonna touch that. We're gonna go into
okay,
the
baby.
debate. You want that to be the
I
debate?
say
We're
she's
not gonna touch that.
bilingual. That try
And a half.
A stretch.
And a half.
Trisexual.
At least half. Okay.
Okay, we're getting off base
Trisexual.
here, guys. Off base.
Never
You know
heard
what
it.
that means? It means you'll try anything one time. Trisexual.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I thought you were making it up. I'm sorry. Babe.
No, it's a real thing.
I didn't know that was a thing. That's
So
interesting.
people decided to
Too many
forget it.
turns.
I'm getting too many turns. I
There's
don't
a
want to
lot.
go down there. Focus
we're
the
human
debate.
beings, man. Okay.
At the end of the day.
So the debate.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
The debate.
What's that top grimace?
I know.
I can't stand when people do that.
It's ghetto.
It is.
It is.
It is. We're not saying you are.
Creaky. Okay. So the debate.
Yes.
So not too long ago, probably last week, I literally just came out of this professional development. And in this professional development, we were focusing on diversity and inclusion. And so in that session, we had activities. One of which was like an affinity group where we were separated by people of color and white people.
Oh, shit.
And we went off into our own rooms to have conversations surrounding the same questions. Really, what I want to first ask you guys is what, or who rather, do you think is responsible for addressing things like white privilege?
Like who?
Can you give some more context about the PD itself? Like what was the purpose? What were the goals? What were the objectives?
All right, so I could give you more context. So when we first started out, we were listening to a podcast called 1619, I think it was. And that was the year, I mean, I think that's the time, but that was the year when the first slave ship actually touched this land, North America. And so we were listening to that podcast, and it was really powerful stuff because you don't really get a chance to hear about the experiences that enslaved Africans, I'm not going to say slaves, I'm going to say enslaved Africans had to go through. And so that was part of the conversation. And so we actually had breakout groups where they were more diverse, and we spoke about what our take was on a particular statement inside of it. And the statement was like more of an imagery of like the experience of the enslaved Africans on this ship, and understanding like how this experience forges Black people together, or people of color together. And I was able to actually connect it to the experiences today. Right. And so while we were having this conversation, somebody actually came out and said that his Irish roots were in some way somewhat a little bit similar to the experience of enslaved Africans, which I found to be very interesting because I feel like they are extremely different. And so when he ended up saying that, I had to take an approach that I felt like would make the most sense because this is still a workplace for me. And so I ended up saying like, well, I, as a Black person, cannot even fathom what it might be like to be on a ship where I'm stacked up human beings stacked up like sardines inside of a space that's hot, it's salty. The air is salty. You're in chains. You're shackled. You got cuts, and you're bleeding. The salty air is touching this. People are dying next to you. People are refusing to eat, so they're rotting. You're in doo doo. You're in pee. You got babies crying. I myself, as a Black person, could not even imagine being taken away from what I knew, what I was comfortable with, being placed on something, somewhere, and then not knowing where I was going to go next. Are they going to eat me? Are they going to kill me? They're raping people on these boats at the same time. It's like, what is actually going to happen? As an Irish descendant, you can imagine that your ancestors actually chose to come onto this boat in hopes to have a better life. Those are two very, very different experiences. And so it was just interesting in the group to have that kind of conversation. And, for him, it was like a different realization. Like, yes, well, okay, yeah, that's a good point. And so as we continued inside the activity, this is where we ended up breaking off into the affinity groups where, we had guiding questions like, how do you feel about the American flag? Things of that nature. And so I also thought about like, well, it makes me think like, whose responsibility is it to start to address these situations? Like those
off kind of comments like that?
Yeah.
Or like those
comments,
ignorant comments.
Yeah, those ignorant comments. And just the work itself, like we're dealing with a lot of racial biases and, am I saying that word right? Mm-hmm. Biases. White privilege is becoming more and more of a conversation, which I feel like is extremely necessary in order for us to begin to dismantle it. But I'm wondering, like, who is the person or people that should actually be addressing these problems? Who should be the ones to I don't know, solve the problem? Do you get what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I mean, with this, I am always kind of torn, and I am a huge advocate of moving past taking that burden off of Black people or people of color. I feel like in many instances, in the example that you gave, it has always been people of color that have to do the work, that have to do the thinking, who are speaking out inside of these larger conversations, these discussions, who are correcting their white counterparts. And I can definitely hear an argument. It's like, well, they don't see it and they won't know unless, I'm like, there are a lot of resources and reading out here that you can be doing as white people or white allies, where you can begin to just like start educating yourself and not becoming like dependent on your Black friends or people of color that you surround yourself with to be the ones constantly checking you on stuff. And it's very timely that this conversation is coming up because last week, so I've been running this diversity network series with at my job, and it has pretty much been around diversification efforts in the workforce, but also thinking about what it takes to kind of build and cultivate culturally responsive learning and teaching environments. And one of the things that we talked about last time in terms of like hiring and the selection process is really thinking about how do you mitigate bias inside of those situations. And we had a guest speaker, she's a co-author of Unconscious Bias in Schools. She came and she spoke, and she's a white woman. Her name's Sarah Fireman. And she really pushed, I think, inside of her keynote, this idea of getting rid of the binary mindset. And she, and pretty much what the binary mindset is, it is a term that's pretty much coined in this book for white people. It's either like, I'm either a good white person or I'm a bad white person. And people are spending so much time trying to place themselves into one of these buckets. It's like, I'm either bad or I'm good. And it actually prevents the learning from happening. It actually creates a blockade because you're constantly thinking about racism is either good or bad. And what she was trying to push is like, this country has been founded on racism, regardless of your intentions of being good or not, your experience from the lens as a white person has been racist because it's been founded on this idea. And so instead of getting caught up in the, what I would say, the fear of being called a racist, start to pull away from this binary mindset of that being categorized as good or bad, and think about how your personal experiences has afforded white privilege and has granted you certain opportunities that have been racist, and then that will help you do the self-reflection necessary to grow and learn. And so I really appreciated that perspective. And even at one point in the presentation, she called out the dynamic because there were questions that she asked after she had shared her personal story. She asked the audience to like sort of chime in, and all the people who raised their hand to chime in were Black people or people of color. And she called that out on the spot.
As she should.
And she said, I just want to point out this dynamic in this room right now. She was like, I have set the stage, I've shared my experience, and then I've kind of called people out to be vulnerable and talk about their experiences. And the only people who are willing to do that and put themselves out there have been people who are Black or people of color, you know, Latino, whatever. And so she called that out explicitly. She was like, we as white people need to do the work.
Yeah, man.
She was like, we will not be able to really move forward inside of this work unless we are willing to sit down and do the work. And so I am more so on that end and moving past that. Like, it should not be the Black people in the room's responsibility to keep correcting you. We have a load of information out there. This conversation is huge inside the education sector as well as other organizations, I'm sure. Like, there's information out there. You need to go seek it, sis. Like, you have to, like, do some work.
Yeah.
You can no longer say that you don't have access to, like, you don't see it. Like, oh, I don't even see it like that, bro. Or what? Like, nah, I never thought about it like that. I think that's bullshit now.
Everywhere.
Yeah, it's everywhere. And I know for me personally, I'm just tired I'm tired of always being the one to have to, like, check you on that. Like, even with my close white friends. And it's like, damn, really? Like, you didn't even peep that? Like, you did not see how Shorty was so attentive to you and just ignored me? Like, really? And you think that's what? What do you think that has to do with? Like, you don't think it has to do with race? It's like, come on. Like, are you really not seeing this? And it's like, I don't think Black people and people of color should be the only ones who are still talking about it or who should address it. You see it.
Yeah.
You see it.
Yeah.
And you find it refreshing too when, like, you see a white counterpart or a white leader.
Refreshing. So
like,
refreshing.
Address it. It just gives you that extra breath of fresh air, you know, because it's exhausting.
It is. It's tiring.
And especially for me as being like a Black leader inside of my space with the state, like, everybody's coming to me for information around this particular topic. I'm like,
yeah, that's annoying. Like, imagine being the only, like, Black person or person of color inside of a classroom, and then, like, something about Black people comes up or the Black experience, and everybody's like trying to figure out if, like, well, that's only you. Like, you have to be able, but it's kind of like there's just so much out there for you to be able to read, for you to be able to access. And for some reason, Black people continue to be the ones to always have those kind of conversations, which is very exhausting. It's very tiring. I feel like it's been happening for, at this point, decades upon decades, where we're still offering you the same exact information over and over. And yes, as it continues to develop and evolve, just like we have this access to being able to put some kind of verbiage to these actions, it's because a lot of us are reading. Of course, we also have the experience, but we're reading it, we're understanding it. You have speakers that are talking about it. Like, there's access to understanding where your thoughts are coming from and understanding your own biases.
You know what I think about? I agree with everything Steph said. I think that, acknowledging white privilege, you know, it's like creating, it will allow people to create a more culturally aware workplace and environment. Also, one, like, what's the ultimate goal? Like, what is the end goal? Like, what is what is the end goal? Like, yeah, people will become more aware of it, but then what? Like, because in my head, like the white people in power, you're not going to change their mind about, like, they're not going to step down because they're culturally aware and allow. It's just, I feel like what do we try, like, what's the end goal? Because that, to me, when I think about whatever that is, I'm sorry, like, I'm not trying to sound negative, but it feels futile. Like, what exactly are we trying to achieve that's going to make a difference? Because to me, white people would have to step down from powerful positions and and I don't see that happening. So yeah, we can, like, raise this issue and people can be aware, but then what?
I don't even know if it's really about white people having to step down from powerful positions, but I would say that when I feel like we just were at the Museum of Fine Arts with the Teachers Lounge, and it was really about understanding why representation, or why aren't there more Black people and people of color inside of these spaces? And how are we going to make it so that we have access to these spaces in these areas? Because if it's only white people running companies or organizations, then you're never going to see it through a different lens. And if these same white people are not willing to access the resources to look through a different lens, then that means that you're never going to open up opportunity and space for representation to actually happen.
But someone at that teachers or that event brought up this exact same thing, and she was like, well, those white people would have to be willing to, like, yeah, the resources are available for them, but if they're not going to do, I mean, how do you, like, force them to do it? Like, you really can't.
You don't force. I get where you're coming, TJ, and I see, like, the dilemma that you're raising. And first, I just want to say it's not about stepping down. It's like making room, right? You have, once you are aware that the systems and policies that you have in place have been racist and have afforded one group of people, like, that's a minute to, like, take pause and think about what are you doing and what are your experiences that have contributed to reinforcing systemic oppression. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, like, I think the end goal, and if we just step away from this larger idea that's really focused and nuanced right now about race, I think at the heart of all of this is self-reflection and growth. And so whatever it is that, as we are, like, talking about putting the resources and tools out there, we're really giving people the skills to change their mindset. And that can be around anything. And so I think the larger message is that if you don't open up your mind and start practicing constant self-reflection and interrogating why you do the things that you do, then you aren't affording yourself to grow, and you aren't affording yourself to pretty much move differently. And so that has to be, as what I feel, the end goal is to give people the tools and resources that they can do some inward self-reflection and start to question why they do the things that they do. Like, outside of race, like, why did I pick this X, Y, and Z? Like, what is this? Why am I choosing this? So they'll be sitting with their family at Thanksgiving, at the Thanksgiving table, and say, why is our conversation revolved around this? Like, why do we do these things this way? You're giving people the gift of inquiry and allowing them to really step back and question how they came to be. And once you do that, your mind opens up to a different element where you're able to tackle some of these bigger issues like systemic oppression and racism and poverty or whatever.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm not trying to be a pessimist. I'm just trying to think, like, because I swear this topic was brought up at the Teachers Lounge too. And someone said, you know, the game makers, the people in power, the people that have the that really can make a change. Like they're at a table, and in order for like someone has to get up from the table to allow someone else to to sit at the table and be a part of the change. And I just don't.
Why does somebody have to get up?
Why can't we just move down?
And it's also just like, I'm not talking about. So you need to make room inside your selection process to have different perspectives, right? So like if the senior VP has retired from an organization, you don't replace that person with another white person. You create and revamp your selection processes to get something different at the table. So it's not about people saying you're in your role and you're doing your role. I need you to get up and get out. It's like, what's your selection process look like? How are you refilling those seats once they are empty? Are you refilling it with the same things that you've always had? Or are you actually trying to interrogate your policies and practices and get different perspectives inside of that organization or in that space? And that's the mindset that I feel like continues to hinder us, is this idea that there's a loss. Like you have to give up something. And
people
in
don't want
some ways you do.
give up privilege. Like they don't. In order for there to be privilege, you have to I agree with everything you're saying, Steph. And I would hope that, I hope it does, change people's mindsets. But I also know that people who are privileged are like, they don't want to give that privilege up. And I just think, that's
the way of the world. If you right now, as we are moving forward and money is being spent, because at the end of the day, we live in America with capitalism and organizations want to keep making money. And if you aren't on the wave, then you're not going to make money or your business isn't going to succeed.
You're going to miss it.
And so at the end of the day, those people who aren't with the wave, they're going to get fired. You're going to get put out of the company because the company or organization is going to keep going.
Yeah, because just like how, Steph had mentioned, like if somebody is to retire, let's say somebody's not even retiring. The point is that by understanding how things are shifting, understanding that your space, your organization, your business needs to be more diverse, as long as you start to understand that, then you will make sure that you have the capital, the funds, the resources to make sure that certain things are in place. For example, this has nothing to do with race. Companies are realizing more and more that they can't operate in the way that in a militant fashion. Like you come into work, you get this done. That's just what it is. You have to get this work done, and then that's that. More and more employees are becoming favored, right? And so now they've created positions to make sure that the culture inside of a space is favorable to employees. Do you get what I mean? So the same thing goes for if they feel like they need to, create a more diverse workforce, then that means that you would need to revamp your recruitment process and hire who you need to hire, contract or a consultant, whatever it might be, so that you are able to make those changes. So really, if you're closed off, just like Steph just mentioned, if you're closed off to the shifts and the changes that are happening, regardless of whether or not you want them to, then you will miss out and you will miss that wave, and your ass will be drowned at the end of the day. You're going to end up falling into the wayside. You got to keep up
because the future is the millennials. I read an article about this. It's like the millennials are the ones right now that are pretty much our predicting factor of what the future is going to look like. And millennials are very different, like a very different generation.
Baby boomers are retiring.
Yeah, like it's not like if you're not keeping up with the wave, then you're not going to do well. And that's why we have all these conversations going on. And I'm not saying that in a way to say that people are actually doing the work, but
the conversations are happening.
Yes.
What's happening.
Right. But people know that that's something that they need to pay attention to right now.
It absolutely is. And I just, for me, it's like, this is like a more like a radical mindset, but I feel like, for me, I think like more time should be spent on like, how do we get people. We should be like banding together. So
We
that
as
create
Black people?
Yes, so we can create
Amen.
businesses and not relying on
these
like
big
Yeah.
trying
That's
to
very
educate
true.
white people on that. I just feel like we should become the
Yep.
business owners, start our own,
You're
so
right.
that we
I
don't
hear
have to deal
with you.
with like.
Yep.
I'm with you on that, TJ.
Making it make sense
yeah.
to you. I don't have to.
That's not
explain shit
radical
you.
to me. I feel you on that.
So I wanna point out, like, just playing off what you said. So we broke off into these affinity groups, right? And that was some of the things that actually came up. And part of the problem is that a lot of us, as Black people, people of color, we don't know what kind of resources they are. She described it, which I completely agree, as a game. And we don't have the cheat codes. We don't have like the special moves on what to do when it comes to investments, how to make sure that we are financially wealthy or well off or whatever it might be. We don't know what to do with our own money. Black people are spending and getting these massive cars and living in a 1-bedroom apartment. You know what I mean? It's
How
kind
do
of
you
like
infiltrate a system that was rigged for you?
exactly.
Right.
You know what I mean? So now it's like I agree with you in the sense that we have to make these things happen, and I think that I would love for that to happen. I talk about that all of the time. It's very frustrating when we have these conversations about all of the problems and then very few about the solutions. And so I wanted to also say that this second PD, it was actually the second one. The first one that we had, I felt like needed work. And my in my feedback, we had our small meetings with like leaders of our department, and my feedback was that it needs to be different, because all I see is that we have all this conversation, we're looking at the stats and all this other stuff, but like, what are we doing in terms of the work, right? It's
And
like
then
we're
what?
not doing any work. So let me just explain. So our first PD, we were just looking at stats. This is what white people have here, and this is what Black people have, and this is what Hispanics have, and this is what the rest of the races and stuff, ethnicities have. And it's kind of like, okay, cool. Then what? Like we have this conversation all the time. Like we already know the stats. All right. We know that like we could see the crabs in the barrel.
problems.
Exactly. We can see who's actually able to walk to the ocean right now. Like we can see what's going on. And so it's kind of like, what next? And so this lady who was facilitating this, she ended up creating a different thing. And I mean, it wasn't with as large a group, but I feel like with us being the practice, it could have been it can and hopefully will be taken to the larger group for the entire region. But in comparison before, in terms of just learning the stats, this time what we're doing is learning things that going all the way back to the beginning of the reason why we're in this position in the first place. And now like, what are we going to do next? And what we did next was actually break up inside of these affinity groups, which I felt was actually necessary. I thought it was going to cause tension and problems and issues, but it was so important because a lot of the people, Black people and people of color, were inside of that room and was saying that we need more spaces like these where it's like us and having that free space to have the conversation so that we can start to alter our situation and our predicament. And so another thing was that the white people went off and had their conversation about similar questions, which I'm actually going to touch on in a second. And they had their space to freely have conversations. And now we're also talking about, an opportunity where we can hopefully dismantle the groupthink concept, where it's like, let's start to realize how the American flag doesn't really affect certain people. So when they came back and we all grouped back together, again, I thought it was going to be pretty intense. It was a little tense initially, but I feel like it was whatever. To me, at the end, I felt fine. But
no growth happens without discomfort.
Exactly.
So people have to get
over that.
You have to get over it. It's going to feel uncomfortable, and the more you do it, the less uncomfortable you feel.
Yeah.
So
it was necessary.
Yeah.
And so the question was, again, what is your take and how do you feel about the American flag? And so the facilitator, she was like, I'm going to allow the white people to speak first, because this time what she had said was, before we broke off into the affinity groups, was like, when you return, white people will speak. Black people, you have the option to speak. because we are always talking anyway. All of the time,
Always.
right? And we never hear what white people are actually thinking. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. And so when they came back, the moderator was like, so, you know, what are your thoughts? How did the conversation go? It was pretty much silent. I'm looking around like I'm ready. You know, I'm excited to hear what the white people have to say. And nothing came out, but the leader came up. He stood up. He was like, you know what, I'll take a moment to actually speak, which I respected, lead by example. And he stood up and he was like, I found it fascinating when we were asked about the American flag and how some people took a lot of pride inside of the American flag. And then some people felt very indifferent. And now we have another leader, she's a black woman, who stood up and said, you know, it was so interesting that you said that people have the liberty to be indifferent about the American flag, because every single last person in our affinity group actually felt some type of way about the American flag. And so it was just interesting how that ended up happening. And then one other leader ended up speaking, and what she ended up saying—
Color or white?
White lady.
Okay.
Sorry, that's a good point. A white lady ended up speaking, a leader, and she's like, you know, our discussion about the American flag, it was like, if this American flag were ever to be taken away, it would feel as if our identity would be stripped of us. And so I actually wrote that down. And this was the part that I actually wanted to talk to you about, is like, I wrote that down and I was like, it's so interesting that you mentioned that your identity would be stripped of you, because and she told us to speak from the I. And so I was like, and I was like, excuse me, I grapple with identity all of the time, because I have no idea what part of Africa my ancestors came from. Not a single clue. My history, I'm Haitian, so I have the privilege of being able to understand that I actually have black presidents and, you know, and things of that nature in Haiti. And I also have like an understanding of our history, but beyond that, I don't know where we actually came from. Do you get what I mean? What I'm saying? And so for them, you know, that was enlightening, because it's like, oh, wow, you guys, that's so true. Like, you know that your ancestors came from Ireland. You know what I'm saying? Because they came onto this boat and you're like, yeah, we're Irish. I have no idea what part of Africa, if it is from Africa, which I'm sure it is,
that you were kidnapped
that we were kidnapped from. Do you get what I mean? So it's like, it's just interesting that you guys have that privilege of being able to be indifferent about something that we find to be representative of nothing but racism. And I feel like it's just as equal to the Confederate flag, given the current climate of our society right now.
I think it's wow. But like, you know, if the American flag is stripped or taken away, my identity is stripped. But, you know, and I don't want that to happen. But yet, that's exactly what we did to y'all. But it's okay. Like, that's fine for y'all. But if that's ever the case for me as a white person, it's like, no, never, never.
Exactly.
I don't know, man. Like these conversations, although I think they're so necessary, something I always wonder about is that, okay, now what are you going to do with this? So Fabiola Bebe, you shared this, and I'm pretty sure they were like, oh, wow, I never thought about it like that. But what are you going to do next? Because what I've observed is that we have these powerful conversations, and the white people in this space are like, oh, wow, I never thought about that. But then they go right back to what they were doing. And it's disappointing. And it's actually really discouraging, because it's like, damn, I was just so vulnerable with you about how fucked up the system is and how it makes me feel and what it does to me on a daily. But hey, they go back and exist the way you were.
Ideally, like, what would you, if you could have your ideal way, like, how would you want it to be different?
Personally, for me, the conversation actually ended off pretty well. I mean, again, we don't have a blueprint on how to make this work. This is all still very fresh. This is all still very new, in terms of it's ever evolving at the end of the day. But what I did notice was that, you know, a couple of white people, at least in the first PD, actually said, like, you know, one of the things that I need to make sure I do is, while I'm amongst my own friends and family members, when they say certain things, I need to help them become more aware of the impact of their statements. Because at the end of the day, if no one is bringing that that eye-opening experience to them, then they're never going to realize their privilege. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's where it changes.
That's what I was, that's exactly what I was thinking. And it goes back to the point that I made earlier. Like, if we think about something of this magnitude as like this big group outcome, it's not something that I feel is possible. You have to work and get people at the individual level. Like, that's how things change.
Yeah.
Once you get one person and then that person changes another person, it's just sort of, like the ripple in the water.
Yeah.
And so this type of work, you're not going to really see a huge change or difference inside of this big grand model. You have to work and try to shift people's mindsets at the individual level. And I also just wanted to reemphasize, before we got into the American flag conversation, this idea of sort of the Black community and what we do with our spaces when we're there. I think that we as Black people also have to do the work of shifting our mindsets too,
Yes,
because
absolutely.
we also have internalized damaging biases about our own selves.
Yeah. Yep.
I know
Say that, Pastor.
I know that it's been nighttime and I've had my purse and I see a Black guy with a hood walking across, and I get
Some
a
shit
little
goes through your head.
tense.
Yep.
It's because we've been programmed to see certain images and associate certain images about our people with stereotypes, essentially. And that goes to, this idea about Black business. We also are stereotyping our own people. Like, we
Yeah,
associate
that's
Black
true.
business with being less quality too.
Yeah.
I'm going to go
Flopping.
I'm going to go and give my money to X, Y, and Z, then support this particular business. So when we're inside of our spaces, we also need to talk about how we are shifting the narrative and changing the story about ourselves and thinking about how we have to celebrate and love ourselves again. There's a lot of lost celebration and joy about who we are, because the narrative has always been surrounded around struggle or pain, or us believing that the things in the way that we do them are in some ways wrong or not as of quality.
Yeah.
But
Yes, Steph. Or there's joy or celebration around entertainment, but
Yeah.
when it comes to professionalism and getting business done,
and what it looks like.
Yes.
Like we have ascribed to white dominant culture and valuing ourselves and
Yeah.
our unique qualities against what white dominant culture looks like. And so we need to take a step back as well and redefine and love ourselves, because that love has been, I think, altered and shifted and changed. And I think we're getting there. We're starting to get more space to celebrate ourselves, but we have to check ourselves too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I remember, just to get back to the American flag conversation, I remember at my old school, we had a culture day, and, the culture day involves every student coming in and representing where they come from, with, the colors of their flag, or wearing traditional garb from their country. And I remember the kids used to make fun of me because I don't ascribe to a certain culture. I don't I felt
the same way.
Yeah, I'm not from a certain country, and I was like, well, I could wear like the American flag, but then I was like, that's beat. Like, I don't want to wear the American flag.
Yeah.
That's not, to me. I don't know. Like, I was indifferent to the flag. I'm just like, no, I'm good. I'll just wear my normal clothes.
You weren't indifferent. You didn't feel connected to
That's
anything.
what it is.
Yes,
Big
I
That's
feel
different.
connected.
That's different.
I don't necessarily. It's not like I had a disdain for it. I was just like,
You don't feel connected
yeah, I
to
don't
it,
feel
man. It's not who you are.
connected. Exactly. So I understand those people that said that, and I would love to, have.
You wouldn't understand the people that said that. They were white.
Oh.
There's no way you'd be able to to them, it's just another flag. And I'm sure that they would probably wear the American flag on Culture Day without
I didn't want to do
any question about it, because to them, that's their
That's their
just what
identity.
It's
it
just
is.
like, I'm not gung ho about it, and I'm also
Yeah.
not against it.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
like, I live here.
Yeah.
I'll put it
Yeah.
on. Like,
Yeah, it was just kind of sad. I was like, yeah, I would love to,
that happened to us all the time.
Yeah, it did.
Are you talking about the school we worked at,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
On
It was
Culture Day.
always awkward. I was always like,
that
I'm
must
not
yeah
from a
I can't
certain
even
country.
imagine.
Yeah, I can't.
Like,
Yeah.
and that's a privilege that we actually
is.
have, being
It
able
is
to
a
have
privilege.
something like that, because
And I attach to the
wow.
Haitian culture just because.
Do it.
Or I attach to also the Haitian culture, but I also attach to my Southern roots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that's where I find my pride, is being from the South.
Yeah.
and growing up that way.
Yeah.
Like there's certain elements being a black southerner that are there.
I attach mine to the Burmese culture. But
You're so annoying.
But you ain't. You ain't.
I could be.
I cannot.
Quick thing about privilege though, but
Yeah.
like even with Fabiola Kunyala Bebe, just now, like the privilege we have to be able to say that. And it's like, I feel like we're always talking about how there's white privilege, but there's also, like even in certain circles, like there are privileges that I have as a black person. Lema pale when I'm talking to like other people of color. I'm like, oh shit. And so I think we should all be checking privileges.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know. It just
Absolutely.
came in my head because I'm like, there are certain things where I've heard some of my homies talking and I'm like, yo, I've never experienced that.
We're gonna
Yeah,
have that as
yeah.
a future
We will.
convo.
Yeah, I have
Fabiola
that.
was just talking about Charlemagne's book called Black Privilege, and that title already just makes me be like, "Ooh, what's this?
Yeah, we're gonna be
What is
talking about
this?"
that.
So
very
we're gonna
soon.
I feel like
unpack
we've
that.
touched upon that in our private discussions a bit about
Definitely. I'm
like
sure
being
we have.
privileged and being black, and
Yeah.
we had our heated debates about it. So
We
Yeah.
shall speak. We shall speak
we shall
indeed.
speak.
Thank you guys so much for taking part inside of the debate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Really
it was a
appreciate
good
it.
conversation.
Yeah.
That needs to be continued.
It definitely needs to
Yeah.
be continued. Definitely needs to be continued. But
I think we should start a revolution.
You know?
okay.
What velour do-rag?
Velour do-rags. I think we should start a revolution.
I
That's
love
really
his
what
velour do-rag,
in my
guys.
head.
Yeah,
that's
no,
what really
it's
comes like. We're gonna have to start a violent revolution.
I don't know.
Violence?
Maybe not.
Yeah.
I just saw an article
I'm
that
dead
they
ass.
just
Maybe.
let out a member from the Black Panther Party after 43 years
let's do it.
inside of like lockdown.
Wow. What did he do?
He was a member of the Black
That's
Panther
it?
Party. I mean, yeah, he was a part of that movement.
I want to know what
I'd be
the
down.
evidence
You saw
was
what they
against
did.
it.
I'd be
Let's
down.
do it. It doesn't have to be like violent,
TJ.
but let's.
I want it to be violent.
Okay,
I think
baby.
what we
It
have
doesn't
here
have to be
as
I
the
don't
violent.
I
wanna
think this right
consume that
here.
hate and
I
doing
think
all
this
that
right
either.
here is a revolution. What we're doing right now is a revolution.
Yeah,
Okay?
that's
It is a
not
revolution.
radical
Look at his name.
like that.
Look at his name.
We're spreading
I also
words.
don't want to be like a vessel for hate and be
Yeah,
a
no,
tit
it's
for
not what I
tat
wanna do.
either, because that
Blind,
that
yeah.
energy consumes you and you become less of yourself too. Like
Yeah.
I think there's a way and balance of how to do things without becoming too radicalized that you just stop being a decent human being.
Yeah, because
Like,
then it's just an eye for an eye.
yeah,
And that's
I want to
obviously a cycle.
remain. I do. We would remember that conversation we was having last week about the Israelites. We won't get into that right now, but
Yeah.
that's what it starts to teeter on for me when people just take things too far and become too consumed with their environment
Yeah,
that they just start to be extra.
But we also had a conversation on the Beans Talk about like extremists. Like when you start to go into too extreme, then you stop to operate out of love, and then after that, you're teetering on the lines of hate.
I just think that people aren't going to listen, or change won't really happen until
Unless it gets-
blood is shed. Until we like say, okay, then if you're not going to do this, then
I've definitely heard
necks will be snapped,
perspectives on
blood
that.
will be shed. Like
I can't.
I'm sorry, like I really
Necks
sometimes
will be,
think it's like people
snapped.
aren't going to take. Oh,
I'm down for a revolution though.
All right, let's save that next time, guys, because
Yeah,
we're
let's
about to get
table it.
into a whole
I
nother
would love-
debate.
I'd
Yeah.
love to hear more about that. Maybe at a later date. That would be interesting. But yeah, thank you guys for taking part in that. But word of the day.
that's me. And yes,
Please
you know,
don't let the word of the day be next revolution.
revolution is the word. Hold on, let me.
So you changing from your word of the day to revolution.
Yep.
I cannot, yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
No, I'm just thinking like a revolution is necessary.
Yeah, it
I
would be
think
important.
to bring change. Again, I'm not with you on the violence.
This is a revolution.
Like you're saying.
Revolutions can be defined in different ways, but
Yeah.
let's hear the
So
definition.
yes, the word of the day is revolution, and it means a forcible overthrow of the government or social order in favor of a new system. And honestly, like I was a history teacher. I know that like you can go like the peaceful way, like Gandhi or Martin Luther King, though that does help. But like to me, like sometimes I just feel like people aren't going to take us seriously until blood is shed, until we take and the necks need to be snapped. Blood needs to be shed, and yeah,
I mean, history has definitely
French
spoken up
Revolution.
on that. It is there is evidence for that. Where blood needs to be shed.
I feel
for
like
some
we
sex, but
we talked about like words being, ever transforming and
Yeah.
relative, and so I mean, we can redefine what Webster's is saying,
And we
what a
are.
revolution are.
It's a beans talk, baby.
Yeah.
That's true.
'Cause,
it
I
doesn't
mean,
need to be bloodshed, but
It doesn't. But I get what you're saying. Like, people get so frustrated and they want to snap necks or, shed blood, but we're not doing that here.
Yeah.
We good on that.
We are. We're good on that. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Word of the day, TJ. Homework.
Homework, guys. Homework. You guys know what to do. Please follow us on Instagram at the Beans Talk Podcast. You can hit that link in the bio and check us out at all of your favorite platforms, including YouTube, where you can catch us cracking up, showing out, and snapping necks. So please go ahead and check us out there. And let us know what you think about this conversation. We still want to hear from you guys. Like, comment, join the convo. Let us know if you'd like us to expand on more. We're here for you guys, and we want to know what you guys think about it. So that's it. That's it, guys. And we love you, and thank you for supporting us always.
thank you.
You know what to do. So do it then.
Ciao.
Bye, guys.
It's necessary.
Hey!